Tell the audience how cool you are.
I think that's a strong exaggeration.
Music, roll the music, roll the music.
Welcome to the Dream Big podcast, where our goal is to find the biggest dreamers in the world and get a little insight of what makes them tick, how they are who they are. And I could not be more excited for this guy right here. Gary Brecka is the legend in the health business. I've gotten a chance to get to know Gary in the last couple days here on Necker Island through the BVI. Not only is he a superhuman, not only is he changing the world of health, but he's a super good human being. You know, between you and Sage, I am just honored to get to know you, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing to change the world of health. Yeah, Gary, I know you're on a mission, and it is beautiful to watch. If you don't know Gary Brecka, there's no doubt you will know Gary Brecka soon, because he is changing the game of health right now. So
thank you.
Welcome, Gary Brecka. All right, let's go, baby. Let's go. Give it up there,
you're
man.
Firing me up.
We have had some fun together this week, but let's start with your story, Gary. Tell us who is Gary Brecka, and what are you up to?
Well, I'm a human biologist, so I'm actually not licensed to practice medicine. My undergraduate degrees were in biology. My postgraduate degrees are human biology. Working my way towards a PhD now, but I spent the better part of 20 years of my life as a mortality expert. I worked for the insurance industry, and if I got 5 years of medical records on you and 5 years of demographic data, I could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month.
Unreal.
And when you spend that much time predicting how many more months a human being has left on this earth, when people ask me about that, they say, how is that possible? It must be easy when you're 82 years old and terminally ill, but what if you're 30 years old and perfectly healthy? You're a 35-year-old male or female, and you've never been to the doctor, you have perfect blood work, you have no aches and pains, you have no pathology and disease to speak of, you're not taking any pharmaceuticals. How do you know how much more time that person has left on earth? And without getting into all the details, essentially, I always say that if I was to be able to boil my entire 20-year career in the mortality space down to a single sentence, it would be that the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. The more effectively that we manage oxygen in our body, the more effectively we deliver it to the tissues, not only the longer we will live, but the healthier our lifespan will be. So we have a lifespan and we have a health span. The more years we have on Earth and how many more healthy years we have left on Earth. So we could predict the onset of and the severity of disease just by predicting how well you are managing oxygen. And if you ask any physician to name any disease etiological pathway that does not have its roots in a lack of blood oxygen, they will not be able to tell you a single disease pathology. All cancer begins in a hypoxic environment. All human beings die of hypoxia, lack of oxygen to the brain. So we understand the importance of oxygen, but we don't understand the importance of how to get more into the blood, more to the tissues, more to the brain, more to the organs. How do we force pathology and disease out of the body? And the second thing that I learned during that career was that rarely is there a disease or a pathology that happens to us. It usually happens within us, meaning when we remove raw materials from the human body, we get what appears to be pathology and disease. We used to think that a lot of diseases were genetically inherited, but now that we've mapped the entire human genome, we know that we can't find a gene that's being passed on from generation to generation for hypertension or for hypothyroid or for drug or alcohol addiction or for anxiety or hypercholesterolemia or any number of disorders. But we've always thought they were genetic because they run in families.
Yeah.
But now new science is revealing that these diseases are not genetic. What's genetic is the inability of the human body to make a single raw material. And when you're deficient in a raw material, you get what leads to that disease. So if we understand that subtle difference, then we can go about putting that raw material back into people's bodies so that they can thrive. Right? Most of us have just accepted an erosion of our baseline sense of normalcy. Right? We think a part of getting old is aches and pains and sore and achy feet when we get out of bed in the morning and being stiff and achy when we wake up in the morning and brain fog, getting a great idea in the bedroom, walk into the kitchen and sort of wondering what the heck we're doing in the kitchen, or having weight around the middle, water retention, poor sleep, lack of energy, a very mediocre response to exercise. And we all just chalk this up to aging, but that's complete nonsense. When we put raw materials back into the human body, talking about amino acids, vitamins, nutrients, um, and raw materials that the body can't manufacture on its own, then fantastic things happen. You know, there's not a single compound known to mankind, not one, that enters the human body that's used in the format that we put it in. Everything that we put into our bodies, every protein, fat, amino acid, carbohydrate, mineral, nutrient, vitamin, everything gets converted into its usable form. Well, if you can't make that conversion, your body is deficient in a raw material. As I start to deplete certain neurotransmitters like serotonin, I get the presence of anxiety and depression. As I deplete other neurotransmitters like dopamine, I get the presence of addiction and addictive behavior. As I deplete vitamin D3, I get the exact same symptoms I would have if I had rheumatoid arthritis. And if I deplete salt, I get migraine headaches. So instead of searching for the disease that's happened to us, my mission in life is to help healthcare practitioners search for the missing raw material, get back to the faith that we once had in humanity and mankind and the body's ability to heal itself and the absolute power that this has over this. You know, we used to think that we use 10% of our brains. You probably heard that before.
Absolutely.
And some people would say, well, Einstein used 15% of his brain. That actually wasn't true. We realize now that the other 90% of our brain is constantly in touch every millisecond of the day with 32 trillion cells in the human body. There's not a moment, not a millisecond that your brain is not in touch with the cells. And if you think about the amount of computing power it would take to constantly monitor 32 trillion independent transactions, there is not enough power in every iPhone in North America to even remotely match the computing power of the brain. When you realize that 300 billion cells every day leave your body and are replaced by 300 billion new cells, and that this is directing all of that physiology, then we start to understand the need for us to be healthy in mind, to be healthy in body. You know, once this surrenders. And so my mission in life is to really help teach the world that we're not as sick and diseased and off kilter as we think. We're really just missing raw materials. And if we would study human beings and human physiology and have faith in mankind, we could get back to treating human beings like the beautiful machines that God designed them to be. And we could replace these raw materials and just watch people thrive.
Love it. I love it, and I appreciate that. And I know you've been on some of the biggest stages out there giving these talks. We've talked about a lot this week. But today or this week, I should say, the last 3 days, you helped put this into action for us. You know, so how, you know, we've done ice baths, you've done blood work, you've done DNA tests.
You made a great face in the ice bath, too. That face was priceless.
The second one was way colder than the first one, but I think we're going to go do it here in a little bit, too. But you've practiced what you preach, and you've taught us that for the last 3 days of eating right.
Yeah.
You've watched everybody's DNA in here. You've looked at our blood work, and you've really been able to, okay, now this is how you can naturally do that. You don't need the pills that somebody's going to subscribe you for whatever. And you even stood on a stage one day and said, give me what your disease is. I'll tell you how to fix that.
Yeah.
So how does somebody implement this?
So there's lots of ways to implement it, but the first thing we need to do is get a roadmap.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, most of us know more about our business than we know about our bodies.
Really?
I mean, I've talked to countless entrepreneurs that can tell me their income statement, their balance sheet, their P&L, what their EBITDA is, if you know what EBITDA is. And so they monitor the business in a way that far exceeds the way that they monitor their own physiology, right? When you ask them about the roadmap to optimal health, you know, well, what does your hormone levels look like? What nutrient deficiencies does your body have? Where are the holes in the balance sheet of your biome, right? Yeah. How well are you controlling your blood sugar? They have no idea. And, you know, blood sugar, in my opinion, along with inflammation, is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Right? You know, we know now, for example, that Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. It's insulin resistance in the brain. And the fallacy that people with this disease are losing their memory is not true. It's that people are losing access to their memory, right? Because the pathways get clouded when the brain becomes insulin resistant. So if we want to push these types of diseases and pathologies off, then we should be monitoring things like our blood sugar regulation. We should be monitoring things like our hormone balance. We should be monitoring things like our nutrient deficiencies. You know, when I see most clients of mine that go into their supplement cabinet, I see rows and rows of supplements, and you start asking them, why are you taking curcumin or CoQ10 or saw palmetto or St. John's wort or turmeric? And you really have no idea. Maybe they read a little article in Men's Health, or they asked their cousin or their neighbor, or they asked their brother-in-law or their spouse. But the truth is, we shouldn't take advice from anyone about what's going on in our body other than our body. And there are two ways that we can pull information out of the body. One is through the blood work. I like to look at 64 biomarkers in blood. And one is through a genetic test, right? Because there are 5 primarily actionable genes in the human body, and these genes are largely responsible for converting all of these raw materials into the usable form.
Oh.
So when they're broken, they lead to pathology and disease, right? Because if when I was in grad school, I remember I took a lot of, in my biology courses, I took a lot of botany and like arborist type classes where we talked about treating, plants, trees. And without a doubt, whenever we saw disease or pathology in the leaves or the branches or the trunk of a tree, we always treated the soil, right? A good botanist, a good arborist, if they come to your house and say, you know what, that disease that's happening in the leaf is because of a lack of nitrogen in the soil. So we're going to put nitrogen in the soil, we're going to allow the roots to supply that to the entire tree, and then that disease is going to go away. But we just approach human beings so much differently. Right, we start to spray poison on the leaves. We cut the leaves, we trim the branches, we skin the tree, and we don't actually look for the missing raw material to allow that organism to thrive.
Yeah. So besides blood work and DNA and all of that stuff, what are the practices that you do every day? What's a daily routine for Gary?
A daily routine for me that I never, ever, ever miss, including this morning, and you've been with me every day, is breath work. Most of us, as we get older and we start to collapse in on ourselves, our breathing gets increasingly more shallow. Right? Don't forget, when you expire, the air from the tip of your nose and the edge of your lips all the way down to the base of your lungs is already expired air. We're full of CO2.
Yeah.
If we breathe very shallowly, all we're breathing back in is a little bit of CO2 and just a tiny bit of air. And so most of us have forgotten how to breathe. 85% of adults after their 30th birthday will never sprint again for the rest of their life. They'll never sprint, meaning they just don't run for any reason.
Wow.
Forget playing tennis or exercising. They just will never sprint again. So we don't respire. We don't, get our lungs to breathe. I have a saying that aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. We really have got to stop telling grandma not to go outside, it's too cold. Not to go outside, it's too hot. Just to lay down and relax, and to eat at the first pang of hunger. So every morning, I believe that if your morning is hard, your day will be easy. So I breathe for 8 minutes. I do 3 rounds of 30 deep breaths with a breath hold in between to reset my carbohydrate receptors. And I will actually miss a flight to make certain that I do breath work. I do not miss doing breath work, and I think that it is the greatest gift that we can give humanity is to get oxygen into the blood, because oxygen raises your emotional state, it elevates your mood, it rids the body of pathology and disease, dilates the blood vessels, it helps with digestion, it moves the intestines, it wakes up the muscles, it improves our hand-eye coordination, it clears the brain of fog, it deepens our sleep, it improves our waking energy, it helps us with our response to exercise, and it's free. But most of us don't even take the time to just breathe. And then the second thing that I do, which is a little harder to get people to catch on to, is ice baths.
Yeah.
I like to get into a very cold water first thing in the morning for 3 to 6 minutes. The first 40 seconds is brutal. There's never been a day that I've gotten into cold water and not wanted to get out for the first 40 seconds. But it's a metaphor for life, because as you sit there and resist the urge to bail out of that tub, at about 40 seconds, your body is no longer panicking. And now your entire peripheral vascular system has spasmed. It's pushed all that warm oxygenated blood to our brain, to our liver, to our lungs, to our pancreas, to our kidneys. And there's a special type of protein called a cold shock protein. I should Google these. A cold shock protein is a reserve protein that's in the liver. And when you put yourself in cold water, it floods the bloodstream with cold shock proteins. These scour your body of free radical oxidation. They increase the rate of protein synthesis. We used to think putting athletes into cold water, that the benefit came from the lack of inflammation. Only 15% of the benefit comes from the reduced inflammatory response. The other 85% of the benefit comes from these cold shock proteins from our liver. You have an endless supply of these. You can tap into these every single day for free. So I encourage people to breathe for 8 minutes and take a cold shower, meaning take your regular shower, lather up, rinse off, and then for the last 60 seconds of your shower, turn the water as cold as you can stand it and just deal with it.
Yeah.
Just deal with it. Because stress is very good for human beings. If we don't load our bones, they don't strengthen. If we don't tear our muscles, they don't grow. If we don't challenge our immune systems, it weakens. And so by getting in cold water and first thing in the morning, you challenge yourself. And I promise you the rest of your day will be easy.
Wow. I love it. And, you know, I will testimony to all of this week is, you know, Brian Culhane, you know, a friend of yours, and
I love
an amazing man, but he got me into the ice baths too. And I follow your journey and followed all this. But this week, I don't think I understood how important they were until this week, because we've been playing crazy sports every day. And, you know, we've been doing a lot as we're out here. And even like my wife yesterday, between the breathing, you have a couple stretching things that you've been doing with us every morning.
Yeah.
And then the ice bath.
Yeah.
Like, the day is started and I feel so great. When I wake up, just because we pushed ourselves to a lot of limits, everything hurts.
Yeah.
I'm getting older, you know, I'm not doing this kind of stuff that we've been doing all weekend. But ice bath, gone. And my wife told me yesterday that she had the most meditative day of her life because
She told me the same
of
thing.
all of the stuff that she did. And it wasn't rocket science.
No.
It wasn't like go out and do this stuff. You don't have to buy an ice bath. You can, awesome. But if not, there's other ways to do it.
Shower.
But a cold shower.
Yeah,
Like
a cold shower. And, you know, it's amazing what happens when you challenge the body and it strengthens.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, we have to tear a muscle to make it grow. Right? So to become physically fit, we have to endure some pain. That first 40 seconds, every single time, you want it to end. But then you realize that on the other side is a benefit.
Yeah.
And it's such a metaphor for life, getting in cold water and actually pushing through, having that breakthrough every day. I promise you, if you've been in ice cold water for 3 minutes in the morning, 4 or 5 hours later, you get a nasty message on Instagram, it's going to roll right off your back. That is not even remotely close to the toughest thing that you've been through that day. But most of us collapse under the weight of stress instead of preparing our bodies for the stressors that are not good for us.
Yeah.
So if we prepare physically and mentally and physiologically, then when the emotional stresses come, they're not as taxing on us. This is why we monitor cortisol levels in the blood. And I watch people that do regular breath work and regular ice baths. I just watch their cortisol levels fall, right? Because remember, it's not a measure of how much stress is in their life. It's a measure of their body's reaction to stress. And so I give these gifts to everybody. And I say gifts because they're free. I don't have anything to sell. I don't have a website for it. I don't have a supplement for it. But just breath work and ice bathing every day in the morning will not only extend your health span, but it'll also extend your health span.
I love it. So simple, but so powerful.
Yeah.
Like Tony Robbins says, don't be the richest man in the graveyard. Like, make sure you take care of your health first before you look at all the other stuff. And you said it so well all week. But let's talk about sleep. You know, sleep is so unbelievably important to me. You know, I've been in the sleep business for 23 years. Mm-hmm. We are taking snooze, you know, clinics all over the nation right now, or snooze franchises all over the nation right now. And our goal is, like, we've partnered with the Mayo Clinic. We have technology to actually map your body to tell you what kind of a mattress you need. We custom make pillows. Everybody's different from here to here, so we can make a pillow for a customer when they come in. You know, there's a lot of uniquenesses to snooze. We wear pajamas every day, but there's just a lot of fun. But then our goal is to change the world of sleep and let people understand, because I've learned that without a good night's sleep, your body doesn't get the chance to heal. And there's so unbelievably important. So from your standpoint, what does sleep have to do with all of this?
Well, I mean, when people ask me, Gary, what really happens in sleep that's so important? We know that we rest, and if we get a good night's sleep, we feel more refreshed. But why is that? Like, what is the physiology that's going on during sleep? Remember, we have metabolic organs and we have non-metabolic organs, right? So, for example, if I'm exercising and I'm working out my bicep, the more I curl a weight, the more blood flow is going to go to this muscle, the more oxygen is going to go to this muscle, the more nutrients are going to go to this muscle, right? But that's not true for the brain. Mm-hmm. The harder our brain works, it doesn't receive any more nutrients. It doesn't get more oxygen. It doesn't get more amino acids or nutrients. It works with the same amount of supply, regardless of the demand. So if you've ever had one of those really tough days where you've worked on contracts or negotiated a lot of deals or just had a lot of customers. And by the end of the day, you just feel like you can't even think, right? You just have your brain fog. You don't even really want to engage in a conversation. I even hear my fiance will say, my brain's tired, right? This happens because imagine that you got the same amount of food, whether you woke up in the morning and ran a marathon or whether you woke up in the morning and laid on the couch the rest of the day. So this is akin to how the brain operates. So when does the brain get more than what it asks for? In deep sleep. Same is true for the liver, pancreas, lungs, and the kidneys. So what happens is there's a secondary oxygen transfer. As we get into a deep, what we call delta wave of sleep, our muscles are not moving. Sometimes we twitch. We pull oxygen from all of those muscles and we flood it to primary organ systems like the brain. So now the brain's at rest, but now it's being fed and nutrified and oxygenated. So when you wake up the next morning, that organ is ready to go. Right? If you don't get into a deep sleep, then that transfer doesn't happen. One of the best ways to get there from a physiologic standpoint is to breathe. From a physical and structural standpoint, it's to have a good mattress and to actually have your structurally to be aligned when you sleep. Right? We know that poor mattresses and poor pillows and poor sleep patterns are chronic with people that don't have the right equipment to sleep on. But there's two primary reasons why people physiologically don't sleep. One is because they're low on red blood cells and hemoglobin. Red blood cell and hemoglobin are what transport oxygen around the body. If you think of the question, why is it that people that are the most exhausted sleep the worst? It doesn't make sense, right? You'd think that someone that's exhausted would actually sleep the best. But the reason why they're exhausted is because their blood's low on oxygen. And when they get into a deep sleep, their blood oxygen gets even lower. Well, as it gets to a dangerously low level, the brain tries to save their life. So it wakes them up by pulsing cortisol. So if you have poor blood physiology, you actually can't get into a deep sleep because your brain will not allow it. It will not allow you to suffocate. If you repair the blood physiology, you not only increase your waking energy, but you improve your capacity to sleep deeply. Because when I'm respiring very shallow, if my blood doesn't carry oxygen well, my brain wakes me up. If I respire very shallow, meaning breathe shallowly, and my blood carries oxygen well, my brain will leave me alone, right? If we take sleep medication, we blindfold the brain's view of that blood oxygen, and then we actually suffocate for 6 hours. People that take sleep medication will often say, man, I hate taking Tylenol PM because it's still in my system the next morning. I feel groggy, I feel foggy. That's actually not true. That medication's been out of your system for hours. You're feeling the effects of having suffocated for 6 hours. So why would we suffocate rather than sleep? If we could just raise our blood oxygen level, we'd raise our energy and improve our deep sleep and oxygenate all of those organ systems.
Love it. So what's an optimal amount of sleep in your opinion?
So what's an optimal amount of sleep is the amount of time that it takes you to get roughly 2 hours a night of deep delta sleep. Yeah, deep delta sleep. They say 8 hours because usually the cycle between sleep cycles takes 8 hours to put enough deep sleep together that you're fully refreshed. Some people take 10 hours, some can do it in 6. I do it in about 5.5. Right? But I've trained myself through breath work to get into a very, very deep sleep. Focusing on my breath, I block out all of the nonsense from the day. I also take supplements to make sure that my mind can quiet. If you're deficient in a critical amino acid called L-methionine, there's no capacity for you to quiet your mind. So when your environment quiets, your mind will wake up, right? And that's not what you want. A lot of people lay down tired to go to sleep, and they can't fall asleep because their mind keeps them awake. It's not that they're not tired, it's because their mind is active. So if we understand that we don't just create thought, we dismantle thought, then we can go about putting the nutrients into the body to dismantle thought and quiet the mind. You add that to a good mattress and a properly designed pillow, and now you have the structural sleep and the physiological sleep.
Love it. Yeah, Dr. Moss, I remember meeting him. He's a sleep expert, and he wrote the book Power of Sleep, and he talks about Olympic athletes and how they would come to him and say, I'm a silver medalist, and then he would just get into their training mode, and he would be like, well, we train for 20 hours and sleep for 4. And he was like, that's your problem. Train for 16 hours, sleep 6 or 8 hours, and instantly they were able to turn into a gold medalist
No
because
question.
they just thought we needed to train more. But no, your body needs to retain that and put that through.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So tell me, what's 10x Health? What are you doing with 10x Health?
So 10x Health is the continuation on a much larger scale of wellness practice that my fiance Sage and I started about 7 years ago. About 2 years into our practice, we were blessed enough to get Grant Cardone and his family on board as patients, and we had such a demonstrative impact on him that Grant really decided that he wanted to take this to. He's already making an impact on people's financial well-being. He's making an impact on their mental well-being. He's teaching them how to grow and scale a business. He's teaching them the right ways to invest. He's teaching them safe ways to build their empire financially, emotionally, spiritually. His wife is doing the same, and yet he wasn't touching people's health. Realize, if you really are going to 10x, you've got to have your physiology on your team. So Grant and Brandon Dawson acquired our wellness company in September of last year, and now we are co-founders and partners with Grant and Brandon and the NFL Alumni Association in 10x Health. And our mission is to open 1,000 clinics across the country, to take on 900 franchise partners, people that are interested in impacting humanity, really changing the face of humanity by teaching optimal health, well-being to the masses. Yeah. And we're going to have centers that are joint ventured centers like the Starbucks, standalone and inside of other practices, where we do our blood work, our genetic testing, and we do something called the superhuman protocol. And this is the most phenomenal discovery maybe in the history of modern medicine in terms of its impact on optimal health. Because we take everything from Mother Nature and we bring it inside. We get three things from Mother Nature. We get magnetism from the earth. That's why I've made all of us walk around in bare feet this weekend, to ground to earth, to discharge. We get magnetism, we get oxygen from the air, and we get light from the sun. The truth is that most of us are just not contacting the earth enough anymore. Think about the last time before we came down here that you had bare feet touching bare soil on the earth. Human beings build up a charge. We get acidic because we don't discharge. So if you lay on a PEMF mat for 8 minutes, you can alkalize all 32 trillion cells in the body. And this thing looks like a yoga mat. You can actually put it on your mattress, set a timer so it comes on before you wake up in the morning, and you blow all of this EMF frequency and all of these dirty waves out of the body, this terrible electromagnetic frequency. You alkalize all 32 trillion cells in your body, and you wake up refreshed as if you slept outside on the earth. And then we use oxygen. It's called EWOT, exercise with oxygen therapy, about 10 minutes of breathing 95% oxygen while you're in motion. And then we lay you in a red light therapy bed. We use different wavelengths of light to improve collagen, elastin, fibrin in the skin, to drive oxygen right into the mitochondria, the valuable powerhouse of the cell, to reduce inflammation, increase circulation. So in 28 minutes, we can completely erase years and years of abuse. And the idea is to put these in all of our centers where people want to have them in their homes, to have them put them in their homes, and give masses access to this type of equipment so they can take 28 minutes out of their day, 3 times a day, and be superhumans.
Well, I'm excited to see these clinics.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Who knows? There might be some snoozes next to some 10x Health. We're all talking the same thing. So who knows? Let's go.
Lose.
You don't lose. You don't lose.
10x snooze.
Who's your mentor? Who's your hero?
I have a few of them. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Grant Cardone has materially changed my life. Not so much because of the financial impact that he's had on my life. I mean, clearly he's had a major financial impact on my life. But what he taught me was to really think differently. Yeah. I when I started the wellness franchise, I said, man, I'd like to have 8, 10, 12 of these things. When I met Grant, he said, I'd like to have 1,000. And I was like, I couldn't even conceive of that. Right. I go, how do you have 1,000? He goes, you have 20 in every state. And there's 50 states. He goes, we could put 20 in Florida, right? I said, yeah. He goes, we could put 20 in Texas, right? I said, yeah. Would California hold 20? easy. But as you start to break it down
Yeah.
into bite-sized pieces, you really realize how massive this could be.
Yeah.
And he's built an army of specialized people that really understand how to scale a business. Brandon Dawson is an absolute business scaling genius. Natalie, I feel, is a marketing genius. Elena is just a trailblazer for women's empowerment. And so he's put me into a sphere of people that have a level of core competency that's so far outside of the core competency that I have.
Yeah.
I mean, I remain the expert on the health side, but he's taught me that your inner circle matters.
For sure.
And so he's had a demonstrative impact on Sage and I and my kids. And I know a lot of people don't say this, but my kids are mentors of mine.
Amen.
Because I noticed that what happens from generation to generation is I saw my father, and there were things that I adored and loved about my father. He was also a mentor of mine. He was a Navy captain, still on this earth today. We're best friends. But there were things about the way that he raised me that I haven't passed on to my kids. And I feel like every generation gets a little bit better, right? Because we take the things from our parents that impacted us, we change the things that didn't impact us properly when we pass it on to our kids. And so I can hear and see my vernacular in my kids, but I also see them growing into their own human beings, and they very often keep me in check.
Yeah.
And it's very strange to be mentored by your own children, but when I sit back and watch them, I'm so inspired by the human beings that they're becoming. It sort of pushes me to want to be a better father and a better human being and a better businessman, because I want to be a better mentor to them. So I take a lot of mentorship from my kids. Two of our 4 kids work in the business. I think the other 2 are too young. One's in grade school, one's in high school. But my oldest 2 work for us in the business, and both in the same nursing school, going through the same program to get the same degree, so they can have an impact with me on the lives of other people that 10X Health is touching.
I love it, and I appreciate that, because Grant has been an inspiration to me as well. A guy walked into my life, this Lewis Curtis guy. Lewis Curtis, and literally family first is one of the things that really turned me on to him, because I'm the same. I didn't have a father growing up, so I tried to make up for a lot of different things, but family is the most important thing on the planet, and it's what matters. All the rest is noise. And protecting that culture, that community, your family, and raising them as good humans. It's a big deal. And
I see a lot of Grant Cardone behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
I spend a lot of private time with him. We play backgammon.
Yeah.
And we'll have dinners over at his place, and I'll tell you as soon as the curtain closes, he's with his family.
Amen.
And he is intense with those little girls.
Absolutely.
Very intense with his daughters. Intensely involved. It's very attentive. And it's inspiring, because I would think that I would go over to his house after hours and there'd be all these people over there and all these phone calls going on, but it's very quiet. He's very intentional with his kids and with his wife, and Elena's the same way. And it just shows you that you don't have to give up that side of your life in order to have the financial side.
Absolutely.
And so really behind the scenes, seeing that he really does practice what he preaches is inspiring to me too.
I couldn't agree more. I actually I wrote a book called Serial Dadpreneur. I don't know if you know that, but it's about juggling dad and being a father and being an entrepreneur at the same time. Serial with the C. I'm in a tutu on the front cover of my daughter's tutu, so I'll send you one of those.
Oh, awesome.
But anyway, talking about family and talking about life, what advice would you give yourself? Would you give your 10-year-old self?
The advice I'd give my 10-year-old self is go with your gut a lot earlier than your brain and your reason tells you to. I gave up 20 years of my life predicting how long people had left on this earth. I gave up 20 years of my life in the research and the pursuit of accurately predicting death. And during that time, I wasn't impacting really a single life, right? Because I was not allowed to pick up the phone and contact a patient whose medical review labs I was reviewing. And I understood why, because I'm not licensed to practice medicine. They wouldn't want a human biologist saying, hey, stop taking this medication, start taking this, take some D3. You could do some breath work, get
Yeah.
rid of the anemia. But one of the regrets that I have is the time that I wasted because I knew that I was not being authentic, and I felt this sense of dissociation because I was making a very handsome career out of predicting people's death, but I knew that I wasn't impacting anyone's life.
Yeah.
And I remember John Maxwell said one time, and I watched him speak one time, and he said, "There's a big difference between a life of success and a life of service." And as I left a life of success and entered a life of service, I became wildly more successful.
Mm.
And I only wish that I had made that decision earlier because I think of all the amount of people that I could have impacted. And if you know anything about Sage and I now, the travel schedule that we keep is brutal. I've been home one day in the last month. We did 6 cities in 9 days. The previous month we did 9 cities in 11 days.
Wow.
I have an endless amount of energy for this.
You do.
I will sit down next on a plane and talk to somebody about it, on a bus, in an airport, in a waiting lounge, because I have so much time, so much of a void to fill. But I knew it early.
Yeah.
My moral compass was sort of starting to gnaw at me, and eventually it took a very specific event to push me out of that career and into the career I'm in now. That would be my advice to myself.
I love that.
Really go with your gut.
Go with it. And to your side of it, I see all over this building, even though some people are playing and swimming in pools or whatever, you're still streamlined, focused on somebody and trying to figure out how you can help.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, and your servant to everybody else. I can't tell you thank you enough. I'm a different man, no doubt in my mind, from hanging out with you for the last couple of days,
Awesome.
and I look forward to the continued relationship here. One last question is: this is the podcast is called Dream Big.
Mm.
You're not just a big dreamer, but you allow other people to dream bigger than who they are from a health standpoint. One thing we talked about last night was there's finances that are passed on. What do we call it?
Generational wealth.
Generational wealth, and truly, you're creating generational health.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing right now.
Yes.
Is because my kids will be different from this.
No question.
And everybody else there. What does dream big mean to you?
So dream big means to me is how many lives can I touch?
Yeah.
I say I want to change the face of humanity. What does that really mean? It means that I have got to bring this down to a level where it's understandable and it's accessible to as many people as possible. So I could take a very complicated concept and distill it down into a simple message that resonates with people, that gets them to take action. Of all of the things I learned from Grant Cardone, the single thing that I think has been the most important is that he has taught me that if you cannot get somebody to take action, you cannot touch their life, you cannot change their life. You can have no impact on somebody that doesn't take action. I used to think that when I asked people to take this genetic test, I felt friction because I was asking them to spend $600 to find out what was missing in their body. Now I understand if they don't spend $600 on that test, I can't do anything for them. So now I beg everybody to get this test done. Not because it feeds selfishly the bottom line of the company, because it feeds the need to touch the face of humanity. And so, when I think of dream big, I think of having a message, a mission that is so massive that the message really needs to be simple. And I've worked very hard to simplify my message so that I get impact in our lives.
I love it. Gary Brecka, you are an absolute legend. Thank you for taking the time for me today. You have truly, you and Sage have changed my life. I know you've changed Joel's life. I know everybody in this building. You're on a mission, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's fun to watch on the sidelines. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing for the world. God bless you, and thanks again for being on this podcast, my man.
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Let's go. You have listened to another episode of Dream Big with the man, the myth, the legend, Gary Brecka, and this man's changing the world. Follow him. How do we find you?
At Gary Brecka, GaryBrecka.
That's his LinkedIn, Facebook.
That's my
Instagram.
That is my Instagram, and then you can get to all of my other social media from there. All I do is teach on Instagram, so you'll find really valuable videos and insights on there. So at Gary Brecka.
At Gary Brecka
on Instagram.
Okay. And what about
and if you want to
10xhealth.com?
work with us, you can direct message me, and you can also go to 10xhealth 10xhealthsystem.com, 10xhealthsystem.com. If you're interested in being a franchise partner of ours, we'd love to talk to you. If you're interested in getting your blood work or your genetic test done, we'd love to do that for you. And we'd love to have one of our clinical members put a supplement protocol together so that you are not deficient in anything.
I love it. The man, the myth, the legend. Follow Gary, follow the journey. You've changed my life and my kid's life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've listened to another episode of Dream Big Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. Probably won't be in a spot like this, but it'll be epic. From Richard Branson's island, Mosquito in the British Virgin Islands, we're out.
Hey, you've just listened to another episode of the Dream Big Podcast with your host, Matt Smith. For more unbelievable guests and amazing people, follow my channel and follow my links.